everybody, I'm Bree the Plant Lady checking in with a weekly garden tour. Here I am sitting in the sun with Cubby Brewster. He's just relaxing and enjoying this kind of brisk Sunday here in Central North Carolina, Zone 7. And I have a couple of exciting things to share. First, my good friend, Dr. Gary Bachman from University of Mississippi has a brand new book out. I just got my copy and it's awesome. You should totally check out Southern Gardening All Year Long. This is a really cool book in that it highlights different plants for each month of the year. And you know, some definite favorites of mine are including coleus and caladiums and Kufia, one of my all-time favorite plants for the summer. So you should definitely check out Southern Gardening All Year Long. Now, before we go walk around the garden, I am preparing to start traveling again, which is kind of exciting. And I have some fun events that you might be able to come and see me at. So you can visit my website, breegrows.com, and just go to the upcoming events page and you'll see what I have planned for this spring. So let's take a stroll around on this sunny day. See what's happening in the garden. Well, you can see here at the fire pit, the pots of barley look amazing. And behind that, the stand of arugula, it's actually starting to bolt and there's even some that are flowering. I always allow the arugula to flower and self-sow. That way this basically just stays as a self-planting stand of delicious greens. As we come along the greenhouse, I haven't done any cutbacks here. I was waiting to see, and you can see these cauliflowers are definitely done. I just need to trim those down. And I sowed some more seeds this week, so hopefully in a month or so I'll have some more plants to put out into these 100-gallon root pouches. I did trim back these. These broccolis were just, you know, really, they were quite melted. So I figured that'll give, you know, some more sunlight to the onions. And I think maybe I have some garlic planted in these as well. And again, when I have new seedlings to come in, I'll get those planted. I'm leaving these broccolis because you can see they are sort of starting to sprout along the stalk. Maybe I'll get a little bit of harvest there. Overall, things are just kind of not super interesting back here, but you can really see the advantage that, you know, the greens provide. Nice green, cheery foliage. And of course, garlic planted all through this bed. And that was because I've had a huge vole infestation in here. So the garlic is great for deterring those in-ground animals. Now this is exciting to see. This small Helena witch hazel that I got from MrMaple.com is in bloom and it smells delightful. I absolutely love witch hazels. The other big one that I have just planted over here hasn't quite opened yet. It was starting to, but I'm glad that it slowed down. So I'll actually get to enjoy it later on in the season. You can see there's some, you know, some yellow showing, but the flowers are certainly not open yet. This is Arnold Promise. Coming into the woods, you can definitely see that Crimson Candles has started to bloom. And according to my Facebook memories, it's pretty much always flowering now. So I don't think it's exceptionally early this year. And lots of flowers to come. This is one of my favorite hybrid camellias, bred by Dr. Parks. At the base of that are some double hellebores. See that pretty flower? And you know, more buds to open. Everything's pretty slow. You can see these hellebores, this is another double form, but they're still pretty tightly closed. There is another camellia in bloom back here. This is Freedom Bell, and I do need to get some oil sprayed on this. You see it's got scale. You can tell by, you know, this ugly foliage. Yeah, here's a good example of what scale looks like. So when you're treating scale, you just want to do it when temperatures are a little bit warmer, usually between 50 and 70. And the key there is just to make sure that you coat the underside of the leaves. That way you're actually smothering the scale and it will die. The big Edgeworthia continues to have flowers opening on it, and it smells so good. I've of course been using these in flower arrangements and really maximizing the enjoyment that I get by bringing them inside, both floating flower arrangements and traditional arrangements. It's definitely the flower of the season right now. Sophia wants to take a walk with us. She's been busy back here. This is sort of David's new hangout zone. And he has the burn barrel back there, and he's kind of getting in here and cleaning up some of my brush piles, which is great, so that I'll have better access to dumping yard waste. These aren't really compost piles. This is just, you know, where I toss, you know, wheelbarrow loads of weeds or big branches than when I do hard cutbacks. As we come up here, I'm just so pleased to see these clumps of wheat. They've really put on a lot of growth. They have been getting nibbled, and I've been seeing quite a bit of deer pellets. The deer have been visiting, and they're definitely nibbling on the grains, but they're growing out quite well. Now, the ranunculus brazen hussy is starting to bloom, and this is a plant that can definitely be a bit invasive. It's totally dormant in the summer season, so it goes underground and you don't notice it. I originally planted it over there, and so it's now actively spreading through this bed, and I've generally not been too offended by it, but the easiest way to prevent it from spreading is just to pick these flowers, and you can use them in floating arrangements, and that way it won't be able to set seed and spread more and more. But I would be wary of planting ranunculus, this type of ranunculus, just because it really does have kind of a dangerous capacity to spread. Now, people were asking me about my arums, and I have never really considered arum to be invasive, but I did read online, like NC State categorizes it as invasive. Arum is this, you know, big leafy green that's also totally dormant in the summer, and it'll actually, you know, set flowers kind of late spring, and then it has big bright red berries, and that's how it spreads. I think it also spreads via corm. For me, I haven't had any issues with this being invasive, but again, kind of be warned that it may have the capacity to spread around. I would be more worried about the ranunculus. Earlier this week we had some really nice warm weather, and it felt so good to come outside and do some gardening. I kind of revamped this bed and got some new seeds sown. That video will be up tomorrow. I've not done any cutbacks here. You can see the snapdragons really took a hit. I don't think that they're going to recover, but I'm going to wait a little while longer before I take any action doing cutbacks. For the most part, everything's kind of rebounding, and we don't have any extremely cold weather in the forecast, which is always a huge relief. We're just kind of steady. We're chilly, but not super cold and not super warm. And I did get some fresh seed sown, as I mentioned, and I have them here in, you know, a pretty sunny location on my back porch. I had originally had them over here, but we had a heavy rain, and you can see that some of the cells had soil washout. So I figured this spot is better, and it's definitely much sunnier. people were asking how much sun they need, and more sun than shade is best. That's just a good general approach for vegetable growing in general. But definitely to get the seeds started, you know, sunny location's going to make the soil a bit warmer. That's going to stimulate germination a bit faster. Back here, these violas in the succulent table just take my breath away. They're so beautiful. Really love this combination of the yellow and white. And of course you see the sedum acre, this tiny little almost moss-like sedum, which is totally evergreen and winter hardy here in Zone 7. Here I just wanted to show you what the poppies are starting to look like. They're starting to stretch a bit. Others are a little more, you know, close to the ground and smaller. There's lots of different stages of poppies. And the larkspur, same thing. Some of these have actually started to stretch. These were covered underneath the foliage of some cabbage that I transplanted to make sure that all of these get the light that they need to be able to perform at their best. I started doing perennial cutbacks, and I'm glad I did, because look at how much the daffodils have grown in just in the last few days. And over here they've really sort of just burst out of the ground, and there's lots of buds coming. So that's always a welcome sign of a seasonal transition. We're now closer to the spring equinox than to the winter solstice, so we are on our way to spring, which always makes me happy. And I of course have been getting my hellebores cut back. That way you can really enjoy the flowers, but it's also to help you know, reduce the spread of a disease that is harbored in their foliage. So a lot of people were asking, like, why do you cut them? Isn't it better for the plant? And it's actually not better for the plant. The plant will grow new foliage, as you can see, and it'll be much more long-lived if you cut back the old hellebore foliage. Not only do the plants look better, but it's better for their health. Here's a better picture of an arum. Again, I don't consider these to be invasive at all, and I do have them growing in a lot of different areas. I'm really fond of them. I love that, you know, especially these really nicely variegated ones, and they're great to put in floating flower arrangements. I mentioned a while back that I'm growing an olive, and I wanted to give you an update. No damage. I think we got down to 17 degrees, but this plant is pretty well established. It's been in the ground for a few years and looking good. I'm not sure how it would do if we got to single digits, but upper teens is not a problem for this hardy olive. I think this is Arbequina. I have more cutbacks to do. I'll plan to hopefully tackle some of that later on this week. I have a mound of computer work to get to. Oh, look at how cute. A sweet little daffodil. It's a little bit damaged, but still pretty exciting to see. And of course the larkspur is doing well, and you can definitely see there's, you know, cilantro here, and then of course poppies all back there. So this is going to be a really pretty spot in the garden this spring. And you can see that the barley out here is really getting munched on. I need to get the repellent back out because they just keep nibbling it down. I haven't seen rabbits, so I don't know whether it's rabbits or deer or both. But I am happy to see it's growing, even though ordinarily it would be much taller than this if it wasn't getting munched on. So I have some action to do here. And this big front bed doesn't have a lot happening, although you might recall I planted a couple hundred daffodils in here, and they're all starting to poke out, which is very exciting. So soon this will look good. There's quite a few seedlings growing. Of course, this is Bachelor buttons or Centuria, and a whole lot of poppies growing all through here. That's basically what all that small green is, with a good amount of larkspur mixed in as well. So it doesn't look interesting now, but I know that it will in a few months. Over to my favorite corner. All this carex is so awesome. And I just love that this Itea from First Editions still has its leaves. It's so incredible. And of course, that strawberry is amazing. Obviously, these flowers that we're trying to set fruit have burned off, but look at how beautiful the foliage is. Very, very great for winter interest. And this bed here, kind of between the two houses, this is primarily filled with lunaria, the money plant. And there's a lot of Nigella, that's this, and of course there's strawberries mixed in. But this should be quite pretty, especially with all that lunaria. That's all self-sown. So be aware if you grow it that it definitely has the capacity to grow for itself. But I was really excited to see that I've got an Iris unguicularis in bloom. I love this plant. It's supposed to bloom at this time of year, and I got this from where did I get this from? Oh, the hellebore, the fabulous hellebore place in Virginia, Pine Knot Farms, last winter. And this is a really dry bed. That's the critical component for successfully cultivating Iris unguicularis. It likes a fair amount of sun and really, really dry conditions. So I'm so pleased to see that I actually have had 2 blooms. That one's a bit frosted, but that absolutely gives me motivation for the week ahead. And the Jasminum nudiflorum is trying to rebound a bit, putting out some fresh flowers. This was, of course, completely gorgeous at the beginning of the year, like in early January before the temperatures crashed. But it's great to see that, you know, it's kind of acclimated now to proper winter, and of course this is very normal for it to be flowering right now. This is a plant that definitely takes up some space. And you know, it can definitely, well, I don't want to call it invasive, but it can spread. So you need to be careful about where you plant it. And in this spot, it can just kind of meander in and amongst all of these other shrubs. And well, I just really enjoy anything that's in bloom on a cold February day. Well, I hope you've enjoyed today's quick tour. It's a bit chilly. I'm gonna head inside and dive into this awesome new book, Southern Gardening All Year Long. And I look forward to giving you another garden tour update next Sunday. Thanks so much for watching, everybody.